In 1945, the fall of 45, there was a Yalta conference where Stalin, FDR, and Churchill basically reorganized and carved up the world after World War II. Something similar may be going on with regard to China and the U.S. Why don't you tell our viewers your perceptions?
Well, it's an interesting analogy because, of course, Yalta came at the end of a destructive world war. I think we're coming to the end of a period of cooperation and optimism in the United States about the future direction of our relations with China, and the question is what's going to come next.
Well, in terms of what's going to come next, you see the possibility of two giant tectonic movements, one with China's centered economic domain in the world and the other with the U.S. To me, that was almost inevitable, no matter what or how people or countries or institutions or businesses felt about China. The fact of the matter is they have a goal down the road that they want to achieve.
I think that's right, and the question always was whether it was possible for the United States and China to continue to cooperate in the ways that we thought we could back at the end of the Cold War and the beginning of the 1990s. Our vision, the American vision, was of global integration, and one in which we would continue to prosper and probably where the United States would continue to be number one. I think China's leaders have always had the idea that they would eventually emerge as a global power on par with and perhaps eventually superior to the United States.
Professor, let me interrupt you. Don't you think China also very much wants to be number one?
I think that's become increasingly clear. They certainly don't want to be number two. They don't want to be subordinate to the United States, and they don't think they have to.
Listen, I know that all this is messy, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but I want to really probe your mind on this. If you have two countries that want to be number one, and it really is important, in my opinion, for the financial culture of the U.S. to be that leader, that this shift would have occurred no matter what, and it could never be pleasant. You don't carve things up in this regard in a pleasant way.
Well, I think, again, if you go back to the early period after the end of the Cold War, the assumption of U.S. policy was we'll open, we'll cooperate with China, we'll encourage them to grow.
To give them a head start,
process,
though, wasn't it, Professor? Wasn't it to kind of help them come along, to push along? It's better to work with them than against them?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And the assumption was that by doing that, we would set in motion forces that would lead eventually to their democratization. That hasn't happened.